Hi, this is a continuation from my previous blog post where we're going to utilize the technique of hosted profiles and in this case voids to generate some interesting forms. Any one of you that might have attended AU might have seen Phil Reed's class on Xenovoids, which was really interesting but used, in my view, some really fairly old school techniques to create form, which was absolutely great, but he didn't even allude to any of the new functionality in certainly in Vasari and Revit 2011. Okay, so what we're going to start off with, if we go to our floor plan 2D site, and we're going to choose a point element, and we're just going to place a point element. If we go back to our 3D view, let's drag that point element vertically. Once with this selected, we go to our properties palette and we're going to change it to say show references from never to always, so we can see the reference planes which are associated to the actual point itself. Once we've done that, we'll go to set work plane. We'll pick the horizontal work plane of that point. With reference, we'll choose a reference circle and we're just going to drag out. We'll do the same again, set work plane, we'll pick the vertical one and we'll draw a circle. So we've got our two circles. Let's just change those from temporary dimensions into permanent dimensions, and we're going to select the two permanent dimensions and we're going to give them a label. So we're actually going to turn them from dimensions into parameters. We'll make them type parameters and we'll call them radius. Okay, which is fine. That's looking good. With that, we can then go to our family types and we'll see now that radius parameter in there, and let's increase this. Let's make this like say let's 10 meters. Okay, which is looking good. So that's flexing for us. And next thing we'll do is we'll go to reference lines. We'll enable 3D snapping and we're going to pick up the quad point of each of these circles. So from the quadrant point of this circle to the quadrant point of this one, we'll pick the vertical here of this from here. We'll pick up the quad point here, and then what we'll do is we'll do the same here. We'll pick the quad point from there to there. Okay, so the lines that we've just added in are going to be the elements that are actually going to host our profile. Okay, so let's just check again, continuously go back and flex it to make sure that the line work moves back, which is good. Take it back. What we'll do now is we'll go back to our point element, but this time we're going to place it on the line. And I don't know if you can remember in my previous article, when I place it on the line it becomes a hosted point, but it's worth to selecting the points, and again likewise we'll say show reference, we'll change it to always so we can see our reference actual reference planes on the hosted point. Okay, so let's go to a right elevation. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add in some more line work, and this line work will be utilized for creating our voids. We're going to create some parametric voids within this form, which hopefully we're going to be able to flex. A little bit tricky this, so what we'll do is we'll go to reference line and we'll go to arc, which runs from center to ends, and the important thing is to set the reference plane to be left right. And we'll just snap in the center there, and we're just going to come along and let's just drag it around from there to there. That's good. We'll do another line, and we need to basically create a profile which is closed, again making sure that center left right is enabled. We'll snap from the end of the arc to the other end of the arc. Okay, so that's our first profile created. Let's select that profile and change its temporary dimension to a permanent one, and we'll make that a radius, and we'll call that inner cut. It'll become clearer in a second, but if you've seen the render at the front of this article, you'll be a little bit clearer of what we're trying to achieve. So we'll go back to reference, and again we'll pick the arc running through center and ends. We'll make sure we're left and right. We'll pick up on the center point and we're just going to drag around. Okay, so let's select this again. What we'll do is turn it from temporary to permanent. We might just have to move it a little bit so we can actually see it. So a little bit tricky trying to pick them up. So with that selected, we'll change that and add that from as just a dimension into a parameter, and we'll call that outer cut. Right, what we need to do now is we've done an inner profile and an outer profile, but we need to oversize the outer profile. Okay, so what we will do, okay, is that in mind, we'll go back to reference. We'll set it left, right, enable the 3D snapping. We'll pick up the end of this arc. I'm probably going to overcook it. I mean, just come around here. You could be a little bit more precise than what I'm doing here, and we'll just snap up the end of that. What I'm going to do, just for good measure, I'm going to add another line in, which is going to be the axis of rotation for that last profile. Okay, so go back to the 3D view. It's looking pretty good, and we can just start to flex it a little bit. If we go back and check our cutting profiles, let's make that 6 meters, and we'll make that 4 meters. And see if these are working for us, which is great, they are. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is get our profile into this little family here, and what we need to do is host it on our points, these hosted points there, and basically start to create forms, and then finally we'll start to create some void geometry. So if we just a window tile, and we'll load in our previous profile from the previous exercise. Load that in here. That should be now snapped to the end of our pointer. Let's set the work plane to be that hosted point, which is good, and we'll do the same here. Set the work plane to be this one, place it here, and then finally we'll place it on that last hosted point. Okay, this is cool. So it all starts to get a little bit messy now, because we need to basically start to create some geometry, and creating that geometry can get really messy, and you'll see in a second you get really quite confused about what you have cut and what you haven't cut. So we'll select our profile, and we'll choose that line there, and we'll choose create form. Okay, I'm going to get a wireframe again. We'll select the profile, and we'll select, if we need to tab through our points, lines, we'll select that vertical line. Remember, that's the first vertical line that we created when we were snapping to the quadrant points of the circle. We'll choose create form there. We'll choose this horizontal one here and our profile, and again we'll choose create form. Okay, so if we shade this, shade with edges, this is what we see. Okay, if we go back to our family types and we change the overall radius, if we change it to 12 meters and apply this whole lot should flex, which is great. Take it back to 10 meters and apply that. Okay, so this is where it gets really messy. Excuse me. If we go to a right elevation, and we're going to enable it as wireframe. So what we'll do is we're going to click our inner profile, and remember we created basically like a half moon shape. So we've got those two reference lines selected. We know that because we've got them from the filter command there, and we're going to pick up the overall last reference line, which is going to be our axis of revolution. We'll come in here and we'll choose void form, and that should start to cut out the inner segment, which it's doing. We'll do the same thing again, but this time what we'll do is we'll pick out the oversized profile cuts, and we'll pick the axis, and this time we'll choose void. Now if we go back to and shade a view, we should have this. Now what we need to do now is join the geometry together. So we'll join using the join geometry tool. We'll pick, basically this is where it can get a little bit messy because you don't quite know what you've picked. Pick this, and we'll pick that last one. So that's basically cleaned all the geometry up. Okay, we can flex it. We can just check to make sure it's working as we expect. If we go back to the family types, and we'll just, let's increase the inner cut. We'll make that 5 meters and apply it. Okay, so it's obviously carving out a little bit more as we would want. Apply it here. You have to be a little bit careful, because otherwise if you make the inner cut obviously greater than the the outer cut, it's basically going to blow up and it's not going to particularly like that very much. If we OK that and we finish our mass, we should have our little wacky little globe shape. Last part of the puzzle, if we go to a site view, I'm going to go back to manage and I'm going to choose camera. Let's place a camera, let's say for argument's sake around about 25 meters, just pointing at this form here. Okay, just tweak it a little bit and we'll move up the camera a little bit and we'll bring this down. If we zoom to fit, and then finally all we're going to do is just choose our render tools and we'll increase that to say medium and we render. So it shouldn't take too long to render. Okay, so you can see the sun settings set for the evening there, but obviously if we were to change the sun settings, if we say still, Boston say midday, and we'll run it again. This time we'll have no clouds and render. So this is a really smart technique of using void geometry to cut away forms to make maybe beautiful forms or organic forms which are far more complicated than they actually appear to be. I hope you found this useful. Thank you.